and welcome to the Storybox project Sports Day theme. My name's Liz and I'm going to take you through a really gentle activity where we're going to read a poem together, taking inspiration from our theme, and then think about how the poem makes us feel, what the language makes us feel like, what memories the poem might evoke. When I go ahead in a moment and read the poem, I know that some people really like to read the poem along with me at the same time. So if you would like to do that, if you go into the description of this video below, you'll be able to find a copy of the poem to download, or you'll be able to read the words of the poem within that description. But if you don't want to read along, if you just want to listen to me reading, that is totally fine as well. I'm going to start first of all by reading the poem. And the poem is called Sports Day. I remember our school sports day, where we all went out to race. I remember jumping in a sack and falling on my face. I remember someone calling out, "Next race is starting soon." I remember running down the field with a stupid egg and spoon. I remember throwing beanbags at a circle on the floor. I remember not being very good, but going back for more. I remember coloured sashes, and I wore the colour green. I remember that we won that day, wasn't easy to be seen. I remember looking at the score, we were still at the beginning. I remember what our teacher said, it's the taking part, not the winning. So that's the poem, really simple poem. Is it a poem that you recognise? Have you heard it before? I have to admit it's not a poem that was familiar to me before I read it for this session and for this activity. I don't know if that's different for any of you, if it's something that any of you have read before. But as I said before, the poem is called Sports Day, and it's a poem by a writer called David Threadgold. Again, a poet that I wasn't familiar with before I read the poem for this activity. So is it a poem that you enjoyed whilst I was reading it, or whilst you were reading it with me? I have to say, I really like the humour of this poem. I think it's really funny the way the poet is talking about his experiences of Sports Day. And I really like the rhymes as well. I think the rhymes in the poem really add to that sense of humour and sense of fun that's being created through the poem. So having listened to it or read it, which words or phrases are the ones that stick out for you? I've actually made a note of a couple that I really like. Falling on my face at the end of the first verse, about jumping in a sack and falling on my face. That really made me laugh actually when I read that. When the writer describes it as the stupid egg and spoon, it's really clear to me from that. Again, it made me laugh, but the writer is not impressed at all with this Sports Day. And I really like the idea at the end, the line where the teacher says, taking part, not winning. And I think I like that so much because I was not a sporty person at school. And that is what my teacher would always say to us when we were doing sports or taking part in competitive activities. So which were your favourite lines or words? Maybe if you wanted to, you could write the ones that you liked in the comments section below this video. So the next thing, I just want you to think about what kind of event do you think they're talking about within this poem? I mean, it's definitely a school sports day or a fields day, as they might call it in the United States. And for me, for some reason, it feels like a primary school sports day, maybe because it's the egg and spoon race, because it's the sack race, all of those kinds of races that I remember running at school when I was at primary school and when I was smaller. And if it's a sports day, which elements of the event do you recognise? Well, I recognise the sack race, I recognise that. But actually, when I was a child, I read about sack races in books, but I'm not sure that we ever did sack races at my school. I recognise the egg and spoon race, of course, where you put the egg on the spoon and run along with it. And I recognise when they talk about throwing beanbags at a circle on the floor, because that's something that we used to do at sports day at school. I do not know why, maybe because it's some kind of target practice or something like that, but I certainly remember having done that at school. And I also remember wearing a sash, so you had to pick which team you were in, and the teams were in different colours. And here the writer says that they remember coloured sashes, and I wore the colour green. Well, I remember those sashes as well from school, just a thin band of cotton that you would wear for sports. I don't know if you wore them when you were playing sports at school. And the other thing I really can relate to is that optimistic teacher at the end trying to rally the children. I remember what our teacher said, it's the taking part, not the winning. And I also can really relate to the writer who didn't really enjoy sports day, because I think for me sports day was not something that I enjoyed doing at school. So what do you think the mood of the poem is? I think it's funny. And it's funny because it's not enthusiastic. So this writer, looking back at sports day, is not enthusiastic about the experience that he had at all. And it really feels like a grumpy child digging their heels in, but an adult remembering that experience. So looking back to when he was a child and thinking about that experience of not enjoying sports day, I think that's really, really funny. And I think to lighten the mood and to make it more funny, the way the poet uses the rhymes is really funny as well. So race and face, soon and spoon, floor and more, green and seen, and beginning and winning. I really enjoy that. So thinking about all those things together, what do we think the poem is about? Well, it's really clear it's about sports day, but what aspect of sports day? To me, it feels like it's thinking about how sports day makes us feel in retrospect as adults. Maybe the stupidity of it all, the kind of sense that those things seemed really important to you when you were a child, but actually when you're an adult, looking back at them, they're kind of funny or kind of not that important at all. And that is certainly something I can relate to about school sports day. So how does it make you feel? What does it make you think about? Maybe you could write what you think about in the comments below this video. So what I'm going to do now, just to finish, I'm going to read the poem back one more time. Sports Day by David Threadgold. I remember our school sports day, where we all went out to race. I remember jumping in a sack and falling on my face. I remember someone calling out, "Next race is starting soon." I remember running down the field with a stupid egg and spoon. I remember throwing beanbags at a circle on the floor. I remember not being very good, but going back for more. I remember coloured sashes, and I wore the colour green. I remember what we won that day wasn't easy to be seen. I remember looking at the score. We were still at the beginning. I remember what our teacher said. It's the taking part, not the winning. So there we go, that's our poem. Thank you for joining in. If you'd like to try more Storybox activities, you can follow the link below to access other resources that you'll be able to try at home or wherever you are. And if you've not already subscribed to our channel, if you click on the subscribe button, that means that you will receive an update every time that we upload a new video. So thanks for joining in. Goodbye.